Chapters 10 through 14 of An American Robinson Crusoe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. An American Robinson Crusoe by Samuel B. Allison. Chapter 10. Robinson Makes a Hat. Refreshed and with renewed strength, Robinson awoke late the next morning, but he had a bad headache. The day before, the hot tropic sun had beat down on his bare head as he worked at his cave. He was so busy that he forgot to go into the shade from time to time in order to shield himself from the scorching sunshine. He felt a new need. "I must make me a hat," said Robinson to himself. "But how?" He had no straw, no thread, and no needle. He looked around for a long time, but found nothing. The sun mounted even higher in the heavens, and shone hotter and hotter. He went to seek shelter at last in the deep shade of a nearby tall plant. As he stood there, he examined the plant more carefully. "Out of these leaves," he said, "I might make a hat." He climbed up the short stem of the plant and saw that it had not only leaves as long as himself, but between the leaves were big bunches of long, thin fruit, as thick as 3 fingers and similar in shape to a cucumber. He plucked the leaves and fruit and was about to eat some of the fruit when he heard near him a light stir as of some animal. He rolled the leaves and fruit together and hastened back to the cave. The bananas, for that is what the fruit proved to be, were sweet and refreshing. After he had eaten enough, he set immediately about making his hat. He broke off a couple of reeds. He bent one into a hoop, but the hoop would not hold without thread. Sometimes it was too large and sometimes too small, but it must fit his head. He pulled up grass and bound its ends together, but the grass stalks were not strong enough. He hunted until he found a tree whose inner bark was soft and came out in long fibers. He bound his reed with this. This, too, made the hoop soft so that it did not hurt his head. When the hoop was ready and fitted to his head, he found the banana leaves could not be used. Their veins ran straight from the midrib. This made them easily torn, and besides, they were too large. They were not the best shape. He saw that leaves about a foot long with broad and tapering points would be best. He saw, too, that if the leaves had their veins running parallel with the midrib, they would be stronger. He made search and at length found leaves that seemed made for his purpose. They were thick and leathery and tapered from base to apex like a triangle. He now proceeded with his hat making. He would take a leaf and lay it on the ground with the base toward him. Then he laid the hoop on the base of the leaf, wrapped it around the hoop, and fastened it with thorns. He did the same with other leaves. The thorns were his pins. At last he pinned the tips of the leaves together at the top, and the hat was ready. It looked just like a big cone, but it kept out the heat of the sun. Robinson now had corn and bananas, and when he was thirsty he drank a handful of water from the spring. He had been now 9 days on the island. Every day he looked out on the sea until his eyes ached to see if he might discover a ship. He could not understand why no ship came his way. "Who knows how long I must wait here?" he said sorrowfully. Then the thought came to him. You will not be able to keep track of the days unless you write it down. Chapter 10. Robinson Makes a Hat. Chapter 11. Robinson's Calendar. The matter of keeping track of time puzzled Robinson very much. It was getting more difficult every day to keep it in his memory. He must write down the days as they slipped by, but where and how? He had neither pen, ink, nor paper. Should he mark every day with a colored stone on the smooth side of the huge rock wall within whose clefts he had dug out his cave? But the rain would wash off the record, and then he would lose all his bearings. Then he thought of the beach, but there the wind and waves would soon also erase it. He thought a long time. "I must find something," he said to himself, "on which to keep a record. I must also know when Sunday is. I must rest one day in the week. Yes, I must find something," he said, "on which to write." And finally he found it. He chose two trees standing near each other, and then sought for a small, sharp stone which he could make still sharper by striking it on another. When he had got this pen ready, he cut into the bark of one tree, "Shipwreck, Sunday, 10th of September, 1875." He made 7 cuts in a row for the 7 days in the week. The first cut was longer than the others. This was to represent the Sunday. At sundown every day he made a new cut in the bark. The other tree he called the month tree. On its stem he was to cut a mark every time his week tree told him a month had passed. But he must be careful, for the months were not of equal length. But he remembered that his teacher had once said in school that the months could be counted on the knuckles and hollows of the hand, in such a way that the long and short months could be found easily, and he could tell in this way the number of days in each. Robinson worked at enlarging his shelter a little every day. He was sorely at loss to find something in which to carry the dirt away from the entrance, or enough so that it would not choke up the opening. A large clam shell was all he could think of at present. He would carry the dirt to the entrance and some distance away, and then throw it. Fortunately, the ground sloped away rapidly, so that he needed a kind of platform before his door. He was careful to open the cleft at some distance above the large opening, for the air was damp and impure in the shelter, but with the opening made high above, fresh air was constantly passing into, and impure air out of, his cave. Light, too, was admitted in this way. Chapter 11. Robinson's Calendar. Chapter 12. Robinson makes a hunting bag. Several days passed with Robinson's hat making and his calendar making and his watching the sea. Every day his corn and bananas became more distasteful to him, and he planned a longer journey about the island to see if something new to eat could be found. But he considered that if he went a distance from his cave and found something, it would really be of little use to him. "I could eat my fill," he said, "but that is all, and by the time I get back to my cave I will again be hungry. I must find something in which I can gather and carry food." He found nothing. "The people in New York," he said, "have baskets or pockets or bags of coarse cloth. Of them all I could most easily make the net, perhaps, of vines, but the little things would fall out of the net. I will see whether I can make a net of small meshes." But he soon saw that the vines did not give a smooth surface. He thought for a long while. In his garden at home his father had sometimes bound up the young trees with the soft inner bark of others. He wondered if he could use this. He stripped away the outer bark from the tree, which before had yielded him a fiber for his hat, and pulled off the long, smooth pieces of inner bark. He twisted them together. Then he thought how he could weave the strands together. He looked at his shirt. A piece was torn off and unraveled. He could see the threads go up and down. He saw some threads go from left to right, woof, others lengthwise, the warp. From his study of the woven cloth, Robinson saw he must have a firmer thread than the strips of bark gave alone. He separated his bark into long, thin strips. These he twisted into strands of yarn by rolling between his hands or on a smooth surface. As he twisted it, he wound it on a stick. It was slow, hard work. Of all his work the making of yarn of thread gave him the most trouble. He learned to twist it by knotting the thread around the spindle or bottle.